Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Paul, a short horror film about youth and memories of youth sung by one man and his guitar. We're going to be looking at Richard Dawson's Nothing Important from the album Nothing Important. This album came out in 2014, and this was a pretty big chunk of the album. It's 4 songs at 45 minutes in length, and this one was 15. A pretty big chunk of that album. So yeah, that's an interesting way to write an album, just 4 rather lengthy songs. Let's dive into this. See what Richard Dawson is talking about regarding Nothing Important.
I am born by cesarean section, 9:30 a.m. in Princess Mary's maternity hospital on the 24th of May, 40 years ago today.
Really interesting flow.
Kitchen window, following through the front doors. Dinner ready, Dad is tuning in the telly beyond the heaving mountain of spaghetti hoops. I am nothing, you are nothing, nothing important. Death within a dream.
Very interesting.
Petrified on the back of a pedalo in the Balearic Sea of alcohol.
It's interesting how these start off something that feels like a hymn, a lullaby, and drastically changes from there.
Waving to us from the beach, gently drifting out of reach. The telephone receiver swinging by its cord, a glass of broken beer expanding on the lino. My mom slips into the coffin, a Polaroid of his sweetheart, clutching good look baby, gingerly over the side. Press my
That little Phrygian lick got me last time too. It got me this time.
A barracuda
What is that, open? No, it's whole tone, isn't it? I assume he's playing the guitar and singing at the same time, and it's wild that he gets out of time with himself. These beautiful little moments after the chaos.
In the scullery of the cupboard, my clarinet falls into a sack of flour, a flurry of pins squashed into the leather handle, a crescent moon of sleeping fig wasps, drizzling my fingers with the magic sponge. Dad says we'll probably have to chop them off. He collapses like a canvas tent on the floor-lit astroturf, rent by a fibular guide rod, poking a hole through his chin. There are teardrops in his mustache, charging a flute of champagne down the aisle, and out for throwing. The St. John's ambulance careers between the sugary pillars of the wedding cake. I am nothing. You are nothing. Nothing for a living.
It's absolutely bonkers how many wildly disparate influences I can hear in this. I do like the escalating intensity too. Every time we get to that moment of I am nothing, I think his voice gets more raw every time, with that being the most intense. This is a new section. Such an interesting guitar tone too, like half acoustic, half distorted. Deceptively simple. Deceptively complex. It sounds easy to play, but when I imagine what goes into it, it's pretty involved.
These words inscribed upon the base, happy retirement, best granddad in the world. A Toby jug filled to the brim with curtain hooks, a sheepskin robe discolored with tobacco. smoke within its brains concealed a rank of plastic soldiers set to burst underfoot. American oars escape from the swollen Tweed, cradled in a false pearl, a ceramic seraph with an ashtray for our brain. And I don't care about these things. Why do they remain so clear while the faces of my loved ones disappear?
What an interesting rise. That shift, so sudden. Fantastic breath control. Bringing back some of the motifs from the beginning of the song.
In the end, it wasn't meant to be. He was the most beautiful thing that I had ever seen. He survived for 7 days before he slipped away.
So we're kind of wrapping up where we started. All right. I don't know that I have a lot to say about the song itself. We have the A section, which it's quite complex for what's going on, and we'll definitely have some stuff to talk about regarding our harmonic creativity there. But we do the A section like 4 times through, and then we explore a brand new bridge, and then we bring the A section back to wrap the song up. Um, it's it's a very Western folk style of song. Well, see, here's the other thing too. Like a lot of folk music is foundation with a melody on top and a very small structure, usually a verse and a chorus, and just bounce back and forth between the two. But here, we don't even really have a foundation a lot of the time. It's interesting. It's a bit of a variation on the Western folk idea, but it still grounds itself within that. Um, but I think beyond the music, I'm really interested about Richard. The beginning of the song, I felt that this would have been a really good fit for Outsider Art Week. Somebody who has created something that's impacted people and can put together something interesting, but certainly seems to have no influences from inside the realm of music, whether that's like music academia or even just pop culture. For instance, your average metal band that grows up listening to metal music and then forms a band and wears their inspirations on their sleeves a little bit while putting their own spin on things. That's not really outsider art because they grew up learning, the sound of a genre that they wanted to emulate and put their spin on. So while it's not academic education, it still is education from within pop culture. Outsider art is, completely devoid of that. Somehow you have to get somebody with no influence of what music is. And I kind of felt that way at the beginning of this. There's a lot of choices in here that not many people would make. The chord progression jumps around wildly. The chordal modes are shifted haphazardly. The ways that the guitar and the vocals play around and with each other are seemingly nonsensical at times. There's a lot of odd choices in here. But for just as many odd choices there's as many choices that make perfect sense and showcase a really strong understanding of chord theory, of functional harmony, of emotive performance, and even of proper vocal technique. And, even on the side of intonation, for just as many notes are wildly out of tune or dissonant, there's so many more that are perfectly performed. It puts it in a really odd place where I can't really get an understanding based off of just this one track of where Richard's musical education came from. If he is an outsider who just has a really strong gut understanding of how to take his emotions and put it into music, or if he is someone who is academically trained but had a knack for more avant-garde performances, and so took that really strong knowledge of music and chords and harmony and pushed that into the realm of less traditional sounds. It's a wild, eclectic bunch of sounds and musical compositional decisions in this track that really hard to place. As far as my mind's concerned, I'm following this way under Richard Dawson. There's nothing else like it. It is interestingly a unique sound. That's something you don't get too often these days. There's just something truly unique. But yeah, like I said, I think that's where I'm most intrigued is his history. But we're not here for understanding what I find wild about an artist. Let's dive into some music. See what's going on here. The A section, the core idea here at the beginning of the song. I don't really know what to make of it. It's kind of weird calling it an A section because my first time through I felt like we were just jumping around between 12 or 13 completely different ideas, modes, chord progressions, atmospheres, all sorts of stuff. It starts out feeling very hymnic, like a lullaby, and then we shift into some whole tone ideas, and then from there we go into some darker sounds. We introduce some heavier picking to get that that distortion in at the top end of the guitar tone, and parts of this even kind of sounds grungy. We reach these points with these cyclical movements that don't really direct towards anywhere. In functional harmony, specific chords in specific orders have roles, and one of those roles is the leading tone. It's the one that makes it feel a bit unresolved and points you towards the resolution. It's why that next chord always feels good. But we have a series of leading tones. It just constantly loops, pointing us to the next place, but never ending anywhere that feels finite in any way. This mixed with the whole tone chord that we have, key that we have, in some places feels very cardiac to me. It's that loose, wacky, anything can happen direction. And I think wacky is sort of the wrong word for it, but it does feel very out of place against the more solemn and rooted feelings that we had in the sections preceding it. And then there's a bunch of stuff in between as we slowly meld from one idea to the next as well. Sometimes the guitar plays chords underneath the vocal melody, sometimes the guitar plays the melody alongside the vocals, sometimes they are playing the same pitches, sometimes they're harmonizing, sometimes those harmonies are consonant, sometimes those harmonies are dissonant. Really anything is up to play here, and even bringing in the idea of harmonic instability. We also have temporal instability, in which case sometimes the guitar and the vocal might be playing the same melody, but they're just slightly out of sync with each other, one instrument starting the next note before the other one does. And this all feels rather haphazard to me the first time through. We also have rhythmic flows where we might start out holding a bunch of notes and then just for no reason we'll move into a faster idea with a bit more of an upbeat, bouncy syncopation to it. And like I said, the A section is just a series of wild idea shifts on every level, rhythmic, harmonically, melodically, all of it, atmosphere, emotion. But the thing is, it rises with intensity until we get to the chorus, I think I want to call it. It feels like the first distinct moment, but it's so short that I feel weird calling it a B section when the A was like so long. But it's the part where he says that I am nothing and you are nothing and something along those lines. it's the part that gets more intense every time we revisit it. And that's why I think it is a chorus, because we always come back to this 2, 3, 4 line idea. I don't know. It's not very long. Anyways, though, that B section, after that, we bring the energy back down. It returns back to that little lullaby hymn, and we start over. We don't proceed through new disparate ideas. We go through the same order we went in last time, with the same exact jarring changes. After the 5 or 6 times we hear this by the end of the song, it kind of starts to make sense in a way. It becomes its own flow within its own world and rules. This feels very outsider art, but each of the individual moments feel tied to something else. This is one of those ways that I'm not too sure where his musical knowledge came from, what order he learned about music. But I find this to be really interesting because we have this large collection of ideas as the A, and then the chorus as our B, and then back to the A, and then back to the B, and then back to the A, and then back to the B, and I think we do that a 4th time, and then we hit the bridge. And this is where things feel like they start to fall apart for me. Richard has already introduced heavy, tense sounds. He has a way of playing light and soft where we get an acoustic tone or acoustic-ish tone out of the guitar. It's very warm and resonant, lots of nice reverb to it. But when he strums really hard, really puts the pressure against these strings, it comes off as gritty. There's overdrive to it and distortion. It feels cold and cutting now. We hear a little bit of that throughout the repeating A and B sections, particularly in those B sections where we've escalated. So the 2nd, 3rd, 4th time through this B section, when he's basically screaming these words, the guitars are very heavy-handed and end up sounding very distorted and crunchy. We hear more of that, though, here, paired more often with wild rhythmic ideas, pulling away from the concept of a beat at all, shifting towards dissonant tones, and even moving away from dissonant tones and just random tones. It becomes something kind of chaotic in a sense. It's just one guitar. There's only so much you can do with it, but it comes to a point where I have no idea where he's going to take the song next. This ends up coming to a peak at some of the noisiest moments of the song before, much like earlier, after all those choruses, bringing the energy back down. Returning back to that lullaby. We get a final stanza, some beautiful playing, and then the outro, which is just guitar noise. Just strum a string and let it just resonate. Let it just drone on and on and on. That's how the song started, actually. Guitar drone. Let us just strum the string and let the volume and the amp and everything else just allow it to ring out for a long time, much longer than the instrument would ring out on its own. I think it's interesting that it comes back full circle in that way. The bridge feels like we're finally escaping that A-B loop. We're driving something linearly. There is no loop in the bridge. It's just consistent new ideas, and somehow that finds our way back to our A, back to the intro. It's a peculiar little idea. Maybe when I get to the lyrics, that'll make a bit more sense. But on the flip side, it is still a folk track. So maybe that's what goes into that. Folk structure tends to be a bit simple. Western folk structure tends to be a bit simple in that regard. And pulling back to the A section, Makes sense. Now I want to talk about his voice. This is something that I mentioned during my first timestamp. It's it's eclectic, I think is the best way I can put it. There are times when it feels like he is truly a master of singing. The pitches are spot on. There's that cool rise at the end of the bridge where he's just hitting every note perfectly, generally in tune with the guitar that's playing the same note. He moves from the lowest end of his range all the way to the highest end, pushing into a gorgeous falsetto, introducing bits of what's that called? Vibrato into it as well. And there's one section where he goes, I mean, it must have been 20, 30, 40 seconds maybe of one breath of this rising pitch. I mean, really strong breath control. He understands how to use all these muscles. And then the next minute, he'll be wildly out of tune. Sometimes singing the same notes as the guitar and just being a bit flat or a bit sharp. It's rather inconsistent where that sits. And the other times he'll harmonize with it, completely singing the wrong notes, out of key entirely, maybe in tune with that note, but picking the wrong note to sing. This is another place where I have to wonder where his teaching comes from. Is he a really fantastic singer, choosing to go towards these gritty, seemingly untrained sounds in order to craft a specific atmosphere? Or is it a broken clock is right twice a day scenario where he's not a really great singer, but he does a fantastic job of putting his whole self into it? And so while the technical proficiency is not very high, the authenticity of the performance is. And that creates something that feels very raw and human and powerful. And despite the lack of training, he still hits some notes really freaking well. And so some sections just come off as sounding really professional. I don't think it really matters. Once again, this is just my fascination with him as a musician more so than this song itself, which that's not to downplay the song. I think that it is a very well done song, and it is highly emotive and very raw and passionate. And there's a lot of really neat ideas in here that they didn't really make sense the first time through, but it clicked, as I heard more of it. It is a phenomenal 16 minutes worth of music here. But I have so much. This dude's an enigma to me based off of this one track, and I'm just so bewildered by the wide width of perceptive skill put on display here. And it's bewildering. I'm really flabbergasted by it. Like I said, some parts sound immensely academically professional, and other parts sound like this dude picked up a microphone yesterday and, all he's ever done is sung poorly in the car to his favorite bands. And it's just, you don't hear musicians like this very often. It's usually very clear where they sit on the scale of, academic music knowledge. And that just, it fascinates me. It really does. But yeah, I mean, his vocal lines are all over the place, and it's just, it works. It really does. It creates this idea of somebody who is in control of their facilities most of the time, but when things get raw, it shines through in the performance. And whether that is something he's controlling or something that's just coming through on either end of the spectrum doesn't matter. The performance itself is solid. And I'm kind of blown away by it, even though it's a very gritty, raw song that doesn't abide by typical harmonic structure, doesn't abide by typical structure at all. The idea of all these musical concepts jarringly smashed together normally doesn't work for me. Dissonance normally doesn't work for me. But something about this, it reaches out in a way that is more impactful than I think people who intentionally try to make something like this. And that's why I'm kind of leaning towards the side that he is not a professional musician. Maybe has a little bit of harmonic knowledge. Otherwise, these harmonic shifts, I mean, if this is just his gut reaction is to do some of these complex chord progressions, I mean, I don't savant level right there. I'm not a real big fan of throwing that word around. I think it's weird to think that people just innately have this type of genius, this acclamation, this extreme acclamation towards a skill set. But I mean, the ideas in here are not beginner ideas harmonically, and if he has no training in harmonic theory, it's kind of fascinating that he could put all these ideas together in a way that fits. It doesn't feel like someone just, scrummaging around in the darkness for chords. Everything in here is designed for a specific concept and leans into it perfectly. So that kind of blows me away, because nothing else in here feels academic. That's the one thing that confuses me. It's so well done. But yeah, it's a lot of ideas that don't normally click with me, and it all comes together into something very evocative that it took me a second to get into. It was a strange first 4 minutes or so, but a few times through that A section, like I said, things start to click and it begins to make sense. And once I started to get it, we had started moving on too. So the pacing worked really well for my experience on a first listen as well. I'm going to hit some lyrics here, see what this song's about, and then we're going to wrap the video up. Alright. Lyrically, this is a heavy track. It starts off light enough, though. Verse 1 is actually, they're all sort of vignettes of specific moments in the narrator's life, but the first one talks about his youth. In fact, the first statement is, I was born by cesarean section at 9:30 a.m. in Princess Mary's Maternity Hospital on 24th May, 14 years ago today. And then talks about his big brother, who hisses, I don't like him, and skips forward in time before showing the two of them chasing a ball through the mud, and their mother yelling, boys, dinner's ready, and dad tuning into the telly beyond a heaving mountain of spaghetti hoops. So a little look at childhood there. The chorus kicks in, I am nothing, you are nothing, nothing important, death within a dream. Verse 2 jumps to a moment at a beach when he saw the ghost of his uncle waving to him. Then it shifts over to his brother's funeral, where his mom slips a picture of his brother's sweetheart into the coffin with him. He sees some fantastical things. Says he sees a barracuda chewing on a chrysanthemum and a family of clownfish hovering in the corpse's hair. Verse 3 seems to just be a series of things that I don't see a connection between. However, it ends with, I believe, his father passing away as well. We have the instrumental break, so there was only 3 of those A, B, A, B, A, B sections. And then we come back to our 4th verse, and this brings up his grandfather, giving him a pewter tankard with the words inscribed, Happy Retirement, Best Granddad in the World. It then continues to describe a bunch of stuff in the room, which may have been what verse 3 was about, when I had mentioned that there's a lot of just disparate descriptions of things that I don't really see things tied together on. It says that there's a jug filled to the brim with curtain hooks and a sheepskin rug discolored with tobacco smoke. And then at the end, he says, I don't care about these things, though. Why do they remain so clear while the faces of my loved ones disappear? The idea that his memory, what is so clear to him, is not what he cherishes most. Sadly, I find that relatable. We don't get to pick and choose what stays clear in our mind, and sometimes that's frustrating. And that's what this song focuses on here in the middle. We get to verse 5, and once again we're looking at random things. A ringtone's plate, a digital photo frame, old karate trophies, thimbles, a roll of Woolworth's price stickers. He says, I remember all of these things. I can see all of these things, but where have all my people gone? As he gets older, more and more of his family, possibly his friends, are passing away. All he has left of them is his memories, and those are finicky. At best, sometimes you can remember a face, other times just a place, a piece of their home. It was around this point that his voice began to get the most desperate, cracking here and there, screaming, the frustration palpable. Verse 6, though, is the most heartbreaking. Everything else was older family. The brother passing early probably isn't that great, but the dad, possibly the grandfather passing, it didn't really specifically allude to that, but given the constant death of this song, it's likely. Verse 6, though, says, in the end it wasn't meant to be. He was the most beautiful thing that I had ever seen. He survived for 7 days before he slipped away. A child, his child, presumably, that only survived a week. And that one, I think, hurts the most, especially when you focus on the themes of the song, which is that our memories won't let us remember what we wish we could. And holding on to the face of your child after they've passed is definitely something you want. And based on the way his memories work so far, he'll probably remember, tools in the operation room, maybe things that a nurse or doctor was wearing, maybe something in the ICU, but not his child's face. It's a heartbreaking song. And it makes me want to come back to the chorus. I am nothing, you are nothing, nothing important, death within a dream. I think this takes on two meanings. One, there's a nihilistic perspective to it. We're here for the time we're here. We were nothing before, we'll be nothing after. This is just a blip of existence within non-existence. As far as averages go, we are nothing. But I think it's also a different way to look at it is the way that our memories, or at least his memory in particular, focuses on things. It remembers what the brain thinks is important and discards what isn't important. If we remember the smells of places or ashtrays or rugs but not people's faces, then the people must not be important by our brain standards. It's a depressing way to look at things, but given what our narrator's gone through here, I think it's a respectable place to land on philosophically. And it certainly bleeds into the musical ideas as well, with the aggression felt towards the end of the song, the rising intensity throughout the first three A-B sections. There is a palpable frustration, but also a pain and a sorrow that doesn't just peek through, but punches through the song and begins to dominate it at a point. This is a story, a broken song of a broken man. Those are my thoughts. Richard Dawson's Nothing Important. Let me know what you thought of this track. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe you just have your own take or perspective on this track, let me know. Put that stuff down in the comment section. Above that, in the description box, is a link for Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.